Raised by wolves with canine DNA in his blood, having trained more than 24,000 pets, helping you and your fur babies thrive. Live in studio with Will Bangura, answering your pet behavior and training questions. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host and favorite pet behavior expert, Will Bangura.
Would you like to go on? Keys?
Y'all ready for this?
Good day, dog lovers. I'm Will Bangura. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Dog Training Today. It's been a little while, but as the year is closing out, we thought it would be a good idea to do a special episode. I'm not sure if we'll get through all of it today. We might end up having 2 episodes on this, but those of you that have been listening for a long time know that both myself and Jordan, good morning, Jordan.
Good morning, Will. Good morning. How are you?
Very good. So you know that Jordan and myself used to be balance trainers, which means that, yeah, we used positive reinforcement, but we also used aversives, negative reinforcement, positive punishment. We used electronic collars, prong collars, and other types of aversive balance training methods. Well, I've fully crossed over to force-free training. It's been quite an experience. And today what we want to talk about are different behaviors in dogs, different behavior challenges in dogs, and kind of compare and contrast how things would be done if you're a balance trainer. But if you are wanting to cross over and get an understanding and an idea in a little bit bigger picture of what it really looks like to handle, train, manage, modify these behaviors using positive reinforcement rather than using aversives and balanced training. So we thought we would go through that today. Jordan, anything you want to comment on?
Yeah. Actually, I'm really extremely excited about today because I can't say that I've entirely crossed over. And let me explain what I mean by that. I absolutely understand the benefits and I understand the differences in the training as well as outcomes. However, I have not put it into as much practice as, you have, Will. And so I think that a lot of these questions, while I do know the answers to a lot of them, I think that this is also going to be a very beneficial day for me as somebody who is still not fully crossed over. And if I'm being completely honest with you, Will, still just a little skeptical, and I think that's really what I want to get from today is in addition to the listeners getting an understanding, is I would like to get a better understanding myself.
Sure. And let me just say something else. When we all started as a dog trainer, regardless of what kind of methods or tools we used, we had little to no skills when we started day one.
Right.
And just as a balance trainer, you develop skills and proficiency. And in the beginning, things might look a little bit ugly. They might look like they're not working. But what I can tell you is that most people that identify as positive reinforcement trainers and most people that identify as force-free trainers have very little formal education.
Right.
Even though they're in the positive reinforcement force-free camp. Now, I do believe in that camp because I've been in both balanced and force-free. The force-free community is much better educated.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that A, they're force-free, just because they say so. And B, it doesn't mean that they really understand a lot of the very in-depth nuances and the complexities behind positive reinforcement. So when people say it doesn't work, really what they're saying is they don't have the skill level developed or the knowledge, the combined skill and knowledge to be able to be successful.
Right.
Now,
and And I think that's the case with really any training method when it comes to dog training, right? What is it? There's something that you used to say to me a lot, and I know that you didn't come up with this ism because I've heard it elsewhere in the dog training circles, but there's there's a way that you used to say they know just enough to cause a lot of problems, you know? And I think that the same can be said about force-free training, you know? If if you don't have the best understanding of any training method and you try to implement it, you're not going to see success. You're not going to support that training method, you know, just plain and simple.
I had my mic off. Sorry. I yesterday I recorded a podcast with a
Yeah.
woman who um is an exotic animal trainer,
Yeah.
works with
Yeah.
undomesticated animals, does a lot of work in zoos.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's working with these huge, amongst other animals, working with huge primates. That's one species, and dealing with insane resource guarding issues.
Wow.
And they don't use anything but force free. Okay. And I talked to her for 2 hours
Right.
about her experiences working with these animals that, you would be like, well, how do you work with them? And here's the
Yeah.
thing, if you use force with those animals, you're going to get killed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's more complex working with them, and yet they can have success with force-free
Right.
methods. Now, she's extremely well educated. She's also taken advanced graduate level coursework in applied behavior analysis,
Yeah.
and she really understands all the aspects of positive reinforcement, force-free training. A lot of trainers, especially balance trainers, think that positive reinforcement means rewarding the dog
Right.
when it does, something that you like. And that is one aspect of positive
Uh-huh.
reinforcement. And it's about 2% of everything somebody really needs to know to be thoroughly educated and competent in good force-free practices. So
Right.
there's so much more than giving treats. And, I've learned a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
I continue to learn each and every day. And there's just so much to learn. And I never realized all of the complexity and the depth and the nuances in positive reinforcement.
No, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, Will, it requires a much different hand. It requires you to pay a lot more attention. Timing is of, we used to say in order to be good with punishment, you had to be amazing with timing. And I think in my experience so far, you need to be better with timing as a force-free trainer. Because it's easy to punish. It is so easy to punish and yell at my dog and provide an aversive. You push that button on the e-collar, oh, turn it up, make that punishment more valuable, if you will, right? Um, and
And
so, uh-huh.
no, I was going to say that what a lot of people don't realize is when you use an aversive, when you use
Hmm.
punishment, okay, even if it's mild, even
Yeah.
if it's predictable, even if it's so-called controllable,
Yeah.
not painful, but aversive,
Yeah.
uncomfortable, okay,
Yeah.
it lights up the threat and avoidance and stress and escape circuitry
Hmm.
within the brain, within the nervous system.
Right.
All right. And that is completely different than the centers of the brain where learning occurs.
Yeah.
These dogs are only learning how to turn off the discomfort.
Right.
They're not learning what to do. Their emotional states that usually are driving these unwanted behaviors aren't
Hmm.
being changed at all. And punishment is merely suppression.
Right.
So if I'm punishing a behavior, I'm suppressing the outward behavior. It, in most cases, in many cases, when the pressure stops, when the handler's out of view, when the e-collar or the prong collar is off, or the tool that you're using for punishment is off, and the stressor triggers come back, these behaviors come back.
Right.
They were never extinguished. And matter
Yeah.
of fact, you cannot extinguish. It's impossible. Scientifically, it's impossible to extinguish a behavior with punishment. All you can do is suppress it temporarily.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some dogs that you do that and boom, they don't go back to the behavior. But
Yeah.
the vast majority, when you take a look at the overall general dog population, those behaviors come back. So
No, absolutely. I mean, Will, the reality here is that my dog is a perfect example. I have not done much training with her in recent years, we'll say. And when I was doing training with her, I was very balanced. And there are a lot of behaviors, i.e., counter surfing or barking at the fence and jumping on people, all things that I fixed through aversives with punishment. And now that I've removed those from my dog's life and I haven't done any training with her to reteach her these things, and she now knows she will not be punished when she does it. Guess what she's doing again? She's jumping on the counters and eating food. She's barking at the fence again. She's jumping on people as they come through the door. And it's a perfect example of punishment does not extinguish. It
Now-
only suppresses.
now they're going to be balanced trainers. They're going to watch us, and you know what they're going to say? Because
What's that?
I've been dealing with this a lot. They're going to say, "Well, you really didn't know how to use the tools. You really didn't know how to train. You weren't that skilled. Yeah, maybe you had an e-collar, maybe you had a pro
Yeah.
collar." Can you tell for those people that might
Yeah.
be watching that because we haven't done one in a long time,
Yeah.
podcast? Can you give people your background and training,
Absolutely.
please?
Absolutely. So I was about 11 years old when I started working with the Norfolk Police Department Canine section. And then I was training at home. You know, I spent the next couple of years studying behavior and just training at home. After that, I met my recruiter and I joined the Army as a military police working dog handler, where I trained dozens and dozens of bomb sniffing dogs, narcotic detection dogs, specialized search dogs, which are dogs that are specifically designed for detection, explosives detection, patrol dogs, so controlled aggression, basic obedience, competition level, military level, working with the Israeli army, working with the Rangers, working with the Navy SEALs, working with the Green Beret dogs. I did all of this for the next 7 years.
And the Secret Service. You've left that
And
out.
the Secret Service. Yes, that is also correct. And with the Secret Service. And then
So
after
yeah,
that,
Jordan doesn't know how
Yeah.
to train a dog and doesn't know how
absolutely
to use
not.
aversives correctly.
Absolutely
right?
not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, but that's always the excuse. Well, yeah, you didn't know how to do it, or you were just all
Yeah.
heavy compulsion,
Yeah. Yeah.
type thing. And obviously, and I've said it in other posts, podcasts and stuff. I've been doing this for 50 years myself. Okay, over 40 of those years as a balance trainer.
Exactly.
All right, trained thousands and thousands of dogs.
Yeah.
All right. Highly skilled at using the e-collar. I'm probably one of the very, very few individuals that has a couple of remote collar certifications.
Yeah.
Most people, they learn on their own. They watch some YouTube videos. Maybe they go to a weekend seminar, but nobody takes long-term courses. And I shouldn't say nobody, but the vast majority don't.
Yeah.
So I know how to use an e-collar. I know how to use
Absolutely.
an e-collar. I know how to use pressure really, really well. If I want to
Yeah.
use pressure, I am extremely skilled at using
Yes, you are. Yes.
what
you
I
are.
wasn't was extremely skilled at positive reinforcement, and that was
Right.
because I was lacking in education and
Yeah.
knowledge in that aspect of
Right.
training. And a big part of that is tradition. I grew up and was around individuals that trained in a balanced way.
Yeah.
And you do what your tribe does. And that was my tribe for a long time. But I can tell you, having made that full transition, crossing over completely, that I would never go back. Never in a million years would I go back. This is where long lasting change occurs. This is where permanence and reliability in
Yeah.
behavior occurs. Now, nobody is claiming you can't stop a behavior with punishment. Nobody's
Yeah.
claiming that a prong collar and e-collar doesn't work.
Yeah.
And nobody's even claiming that they don't work fast.
Hmm.
What the problem is a couple of things. Number one, welfare.
Right.
All right. We know that even mild, like I said, mild, controllable, predictable aversives light up the amygdala, the caudate insula, the caudate nucleus, the periaqueductal gray. I think I spit out all those terms correctly. But basically, the nervous system where the threat and stress circuitry are. And where balance trainers will like to say, but if I can give just one quick correction, mild and humane, it's not a big deal. Well, the problem is suppression, which is all that can do, is temporary.
Hmm.
And you either have to continue to correct and punish the dog, or there has to be a threat of that.
Yeah.
Wearing the e-collar being a threat of that.
Yeah.
Wearing the prong collar being a threat of that, whether you use it or not. And guess what? The threat of it, even not using it, if there's been a history of using it, the threat of using it, and the dog knows, the dog is working. Because if you're maintaining that behavior, the dog's still going into escape and avoidance, whether the tool is being used or not. And the tool doesn't have to be used to light up the nervous system in the threat and stress pathways. So
Right.
it's not just one correction. It's the correction. It's a threat of correction. And because it only suppresses behavior, you have to keep using those tools. You gave a perfect example with your dog. And if you stop using those tools, not every dog, but the vast majority of dogs, those behaviors are going to come back. And now it's not just one correction. That's a myth.
Right.
You're using that over. And here's the thing. Everybody wants to talk about, well, we use the e-collar very humanely, very low level. You know, they want to BS and say it's just a tap and a tickle when it's not. It's uncomfortable, but granted, it's not like blasting the dog with the e-collar.
Right.
However, when you use low level e-collar, just high enough to stop the behavior, which is, hey, listen, that's punishment.
Yeah.
If you're getting that result, it's punishment, period. You can't get that result unless it is punishment.
No, absolutely.
And here's the thing. When you're using low level, the dog starts to habituate that and gets desensitized to that.
Right.
So what that means is that through time, in order to get the same result, it's got to become more painful. It's got to be more painful.
Absolutely.
Over time, it goes up.
Absolutely. No, because I mean, and that's the same to be said with anything positive or negative. Your brain gets used to the stimulus, plain and simple. Your brain gets used to the stimulus, and eventually you need more to feel the same result.
And that doesn't mean they get used to it and they're feeling great about it.
Right.
All right. An aversive is an aversive is an aversive. And again, we know with awake fMRI studies what happens in the brain. And that's why there's so much going on today in welfare science, animal welfare science.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that every dog falls apart and is shaking and trembling and having, learned helplessness and just falling apart. But that constant, continuous, low-level stress that's happening to the dogs and the cortisol that usually rises, the stress hormones, affects every cell in the body.
Exactly. And I mean, I think when we're looking at punishment, fear-free, and we're looking at these things, it's important that we define a couple specific terms. Like you said if if it doesn't have to hurt to be a punishment. I mean, let's look at what operant conditioning, according to operant conditioning, what a punishment is. It is any consequence. And remember, we have to remember that consequences are just the result of something else, is a consequence. It is any consequence that decreases the likelihood that a behavior will occur again. Plain and simple.
Through
And
an
that
unpleasant
is punishment.
stimulus. Through an
Exactly.
unpleasant stimulus. Yeah.
And so,
And it's got to be sufficiently unpleasant
right.
for the dog to want to stop the behavior.
Yeah. So I think a great first question
Yeah.
here is, what is fear-free training?
What is
what is
fear-free
it?
training?
Yeah.
That's a great question. Well, first of all, the one thing I think that a lot of people don't really understand
Uh-huh.
when we're talking about, how do I want to word this? When we're talking about fear-free dog training, what is fear-free dog training? Again, a lot of people think that it's permissive, for one.
Yeah.
They think that you never say no. You know, true force-free training is not about a tool list.
Yeah.
All right. It's not a brand. It's not a particular vibe. Really, force-free training is in very broad terms, it's a decision-making framework.
Okay.
You know, at its core, force-free training means that we intentionally avoid
Mm-hmm.
fear, pain, or intimidation or stress as teaching tools. And
Right.
not just the obvious stuff like shock collars and prong collars. I'm also talking about the subtle things: leash pressure, spatial pressure, watching
Okay.
as we're training. Is the dog experiencing frustration?
Yeah. Yeah.
Withholding treats. We don't do that.
Okay.
Not
I think-
force free. And, you know, all of that, you know, a truly force free trainer is constantly asking one question.
Mm-hmm.
And that is there anything in this setup that could feel aversive or stressful to the dog, even unintentionally? And if the
Right.
answer is yes, we need to redesign that plan.
Right.
And the other thing that people don't understand is force-free training stays within one learning quadrant: positive reinforcement. That means
Yeah.
that we teach by adding things the dog wants, not by
Yeah.
taking things away
Yeah.
or applying pressure. And there's a lot of people that think that a truly force-free trainer uses negative punishment, taking away something the dog likes. And then they'll say, well, that's aversive too. And in some cases, that might be even more aversive to the dog. Agreed.
Yeah.
Asked and answered. But see, this is where people get tripped up. Positive reinforcement is not just about giving treats, it's an entire system of learning. It
Right.
includes, a big part of it is arranging the environment so that the behavior you want is easy and the behavior you don't want doesn't pay off anymore. So
Yeah.
arranging the environment so the dog can't rehearse the unwanted behaviors, arranging the environment to make it really easy for the dog to learn what we're trying to teach it. It means, you know, identifying what the actual reinforcer is at that moment.
Right.
And here's the other thing. Sometimes it's food.
Right.
Guess what? Sometimes it's movement.
Mm.
Sometimes it's distance. Sometimes it's access to something. Sometimes it's information. So again, this very limited thought process that positive reinforcement is just about giving cookies to dogs. You know, force-free training includes differential reinforcement, teaching alternative behaviors that are incompatible. Well, that's one type of differential reinforcement is DRI. But reinforcing one behavior so that another behavior naturally fades without needing to correct it. Okay.
Right.
It includes the use of things like the Premack principle, using
Yeah.
a high value behavior to reinforce a lower value behavior. It includes free shaping, where the dog learns through exploration and problem solving instead of being physically guided or corrected. It includes counter conditioning and desensitization, where we're changing how the dog feels, not just what the dog does.
Yeah.
It includes understanding motivating operations, how stress, fatigue, arousal, hunger, and context completely change what works as reinforcement. And it includes, and this is where a lot of people don't get it either, reinforcement schedules. Knowing when to reinforce heavily,
Yes.
when to thin out that
Yep.
reinforcement to get the dog even working harder, and how to do that without creating frustration in the dog
Right.
or
Right.
instability. That's force-free training when it's done well, and that's just a little sample of what's
Right.
involved in
And
force-free
the
training.
reality here is, even as a balanced trainer, I absolutely never underestimated the power of a reinforcement schedule. I absolutely never underestimated how much value my training would how much the value of my training would increase, the value of my reinforcer increased if I was, creating a variable schedule for my dog. Or maybe we're at a point where I'm creating a constant reward schedule. But the point of the matter is, changing it up is what was important. So I really like that. But you said something at the very beginning that I think also keeps it to a very basic level. You said this includes things like leash pressure and leash corrections, right?
Yeah.
So I think that leash pressure is arguably one of the first things that you learn as a dog trainer. I think that understanding how to apply pressure on a dog's neck through a collar and a leash is the first tool that almost all trainers add to their toolbox. So, with that being said,
Okay.
how do I train a dog that's pulling on the leash if I'm not allowed to give them a correction or give them that little tug or provide them with leash pressure? How do I do that as a fear-free or
Yeah.
force-free trainer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing I want to say is I don't start by trying to stop pulling.
Yeah.
I start by asking why the dog is pulling in the first place.
Right.
All right. And force-free training is very thoughtful.
Yeah.
Most dogs pull because the environment is more reinforcing than the handler.
Right.
Not because they're being stubborn, not because they're a bad dog or dominant. That's all garbage. All right. They're pulling because it works
Yeah.
to get them to something that they find valuable. All right.
Right.
So force-free training starts by changing that equation to begin with. All right. Step one is management. I'm not practicing or not letting the dog practicing pulling while I'm trying to teach loose leash walking. That
Right.
means better equipment, shorter sessions, quieter environments at first. Okay. So I'm not going to take my dog into a situation where it's going to be able to pull or want to pull. Let's put it that way.
Right.
All right. To start with. Step two, I'm going to be teaching position, not correcting behavior. I reinforce the dog for being in the spot that I want the dog to be in, not for not pulling, but
Right.
for walking where I want them to. All right. Step three is going to be my reinforcement rate. Early on, I'm going to be reinforcing a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make sure I've got really high value food rewards. I'm going to be reinforcing a lot more than most people think they should. But
Yeah.
that's how new skills get built. That's where that initial motivation comes from. All right. Now, the next step, I'm going to be teaching engagement. The dog's going to learn that checking in with me predicts good things.
Right.
All right. I'm going to be working indoors where there aren't any distractions first.
Yeah.
I don't even put a leash on the dog. I may start with some food lures. I may start by teaching touch and using my hand and the touch cue to get the dog into the position that I want.
Right.
And then bring that into loose leash walking. Balance training usually makes pulling uncomfortable. Force-free training makes walking with me in the right position pay better
Yeah.
than walking away from me. And when the dog understands that, pulling just it dies off on its own. But you've got to be more interesting than the dog, and you've got to have a good reinforcement schedule. You have to teach the dog where you want it to be, and you've got to do that in an environment where there's little to no distractions. And then again, teaching that engagement and slowly, gradually, and systematically start adding more and more distractions. And at any time, the dog is starting to want to get ahead of me, out of position, and pull. That doesn't mean that force-free training doesn't work. It means that's information.
Yeah.
I need to make an adjustment to my plan. And usually what it comes down to is somebody taking too big of steps forward, wanting to rush through the process.
Yeah.
All right. Rather than put in the real work. And I think that's the appeal with the aversive methods and tools is they want to get it done fast.
Yeah.
But what's really fast? If I have to keep coming back to correcting the dog,
Right.
or if I have to take the tools off, what did I really do? I didn't do much, really.
Yeah. No, honestly.
But, this is where the difference between approaches, really shows up. Balance training, tries to stop the behavior. I'm trying to change how the dog feels. For example, when, they're walking and there are these distractions where the dog views paying attention to me and staying in position as the more valuable reinforcer.
Right. Okay.
I mean, that's just, a small piece, but.
Yeah. So you said that you would never put the dog into a position where they're going to react, right? To where they're going to have these things occur. But then how do I train that without corrections? How do I have a dog that is reactive on leash, that lunges and barks when it sees other dogs, when it sees people, whatever, whether it's aggression, fear? I just have a dog that is super reactive.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's so simple for me to be like, and just correct that behavior.
Sure.
How do I handle that?
Well, first of all, let's understand that the vast majority of reactivity is a dog that has anxiety, stress, and fear and views whatever the trigger is, whether it be another dog or whether it be a person when it's on leash and being reactive. Most of the time, the dog views that trigger as a perceived threat. There might not be any real threat. Okay.
Right.
And if I use an aversive to correct that outward behavior, now I'm adding another threat. And I'm associating that whatever the trigger is, whether it's people or dogs that the dog's reactive to, that not only are they scary, but they bring about pain.
Right.
So I'm putting this dog in a pressure cooker, and eventually that dog snaps as a result of that. Now, not every dog, but the vast majority at the population level of dogs. But see, this is the difference between approaches and where it really shows, because balance training tries to stop the outward behavior.
Right.
As a force-free trainer, I'm trying to change how the dog feels when they see the trigger, when they see another dog or see another person. The first step is distance. I start far enough away that the dog can still think. If they're reactive, they've accessed a certain part of the brain and they've shut down another part of the brain where thinking and learning can't occur. So if the dog has hit that red zone and they're reactive, all I can do is manage, try to get the dog out of that situation. All right. But if I've gotten to that point, I've already failed as a force-free trainer. Step one is distance. I start far enough away where the dog can still think. If the dog's over threshold, like I said, it's not going to learn anything. Step two is predictability. The dog appears, and in the past, when there wasn't enough distance, the reactive dog viewed that dog as a perceived threat. Now, starting at a distance where the dog notices the trigger but doesn't have a care in the world, I start pairing positive reinforcement through counter conditioning. The dog starts to desensitize to the trigger. The dog, the stressor, the trigger appears, and then good things happen.
Right.
The dog disappears. Okay. There's no pressure, but the good things stop.
Right.
That pattern matters. All right. In the counter conditioning, I'm pairing the sight of another dog or whatever that trigger is. It could be a person with something the dog genuinely loves. And over time, the dog's underlying emotional response changes, and it changes so much so that when it sees the trigger, it doesn't have to think about anything. There's an automatic reflex where there's a new conditioned emotional response. When it sees another dog or a person, wonderful things happen. It's feeling good. It's excited about it. And then
Yeah.
gradually, systematically, we're decreasing in distance. But you got to do that at the dog's pace. There's no rushing. Again, you rush, you're going to lose the dog. The dog's going to be reactive, and there's nothing you can do in that situation. And again, people get frustrated, and that's why they reach for aversives. That's why they reach for punishment or
Right.
try to redirect the dog to do something else with negative reinforcement. But that's temporary, and it doesn't teach a dog, what it really should do. But the bottom line doesn't change their underlying emotional state. Look,
Yeah.
corrections can suppress the lunging. They don't change the emotional response that drives it. Okay. Force-free training, we're more concerned about that underlying cause, the emotional state that's driving it. And when we
Right.
change that, now there's permanence, reliability, and really true lasting change.
Yeah.
Can they relapse, fall back a little bit? Yeah, especially if you didn't do the work right.
Yeah.
But that's with any kind of training.
Absolutely. So what about, just generalized aggression, because aggression is serious. What if I have a dog that, we're not talking about reacting on leash. I'm talking about a dog that if somebody walks through my front door, I am genuinely scared that my dog is going to attack this person, and I cannot have that happen.
Sure. Well, first, safety always comes first.
Yeah.
And managing the situation,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean failure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The big difference is I don't confuse safety with intimidation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Step one is really identifying the triggers
Mm-hmm.
and the patterns that the dog is engaging in. And very similar to what I was saying previously, this isn't that complicated. The first step, not that it's the fix, but it is the first step to the fix. I've got to prevent the rehearsal of this behavior. If the dog keeps rehearsing the behavior, it just gets more and more habituated, more and more conditioned. So in the beginning, I've got to do management. All right. I've got to get the dog far enough away from triggers where the dog's not going to engage in that behavior. Imagine, if you would, we've got scales, that weighing something, right? And I could be, doing a little bit of work. Maybe I'm doing, 5 sessions a week, counter conditioning and desensitization, but the dog's triggering 8 times a day.
Right.
Right. Well, that's just simply not going to work. Right. So I've got to prevent the rehearsal of this behavior through management to begin with. Then there's the counter conditioning at the safe distance, and that's pairing positive reinforcement, something the dog absolutely loves, with really good timing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of nuances. That I've got some very specific ways that I do it that I have found make it more successful than other ways. But in a nutshell, pairing positive reinforcers with the trigger at a distance where the dog doesn't have a care in the world about the trigger, so the dog's underlying emotional state is neutral.
Right.
And we are changing that neutral emotion to a positive, happy, excitable emotion. The dog starts looking forward to whatever that trigger is that it was aggressive towards coming into view at that distance. Then at that point, we're able to move a little bit closer. Now, at any point I get closer and the dog starts reacting, I've gone too close too soon. This is a conditioning process. It takes time. And then also teaching coping skills and predictable routines. When a dog can predict what's going to happen, and this is a thing that I use a lot of pattern games. When a dog can predict what's going to happen in the environment, and when I bring that into that environment, that stress level goes down a lot.
Right.
I've said it before, punishment can suppress aggression, but suppressed aggression is dangerous. Force-free training, I'm going to prioritize predictability, trust, emotional safety. And when you have that, when the dog feels that, experiences that, those behaviors melt away.
Right.
But you got to know how to do it, just like in anything else. But
Absolutely.
again, it's very different than suppressing outward behavior. You're trying to deal with the underlying root cause.
That makes a lot of sense. So, and I mean, I'm assuming that the answer is similar, but what about resource guarding? You know, if a dog is guarding a food or objects or places, how do I correct this without taking things away or, asserting control over the dog?
Well, that's exactly how you create resource guarding,
Mm-hmm.
by asserting that control, taking things away. Whether the dog came to you thinking that resources are scarce and it's scary, and anybody that comes near me is going to take it away, or whether that was been taught. Resource guarding gets taught a lot with puppies.
Right.
They grab something they shouldn't,
Mm-hmm.
and the pet parent grabs it and takes it away,
Right.
and nothing better happens. Okay. And so they start learning that all these objects that I want, all these things that I want and I put in my mouth, they're going to get taken from me.
Yeah.
And they start resource guarding.
Yeah.
That's one of the ways that we can actually create that. But step one is management, not confrontation,
Mm-hmm.
not showing them who's boss. Okay. Yeah. Can you do that and stop outward behavior? Maybe temporarily, but it's going to resurface and it's going to be worse because of the pressure you put the dog under. You didn't, again, make the dog feel safe when anybody comes around those resources. Okay.
Right.
So step two is teaching the dog that any human approaching whatever that resource is, whether it be a toy, whether it be food, whether it be a person, another dog, a comfortable space or location, it's about teaching the dog that humans coming near the dog and the resource predict better outcomes, not losses.
Right.
So doing trading games and starting at a distance where the dog is noticing that you're approaching, but not yet concerned, just aware.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pair that presentation of that person coming at that distance with something more valuable to the dog than what the dog already has.
Okay.
That it's resource
And
guard.
and how do I do that if because that sounds to me like somebody needs to be close to the dog. And
For
what if
why?
nobody
Why?
can get close? Well, that's what I'm saying is that's what it sounds like is in order to provide the dog with something more valuable with something very positive, how do I do that without getting close to the dog?
I can throw it to the dog. Number one, food.
Mhm.
It's okay if the dog lets go of the resource to move to
Right.
the side and get the food.
Right.
And then it most likely will come back to that resource.
Mhm.
Okay. I could have a remote feeder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like a treat and train where I've got
Right.
a remote and it spits out the food reward. I could have that right by the dog.
Yeah.
So there's tools out there that I can use that work really good for that. But
Okay.
this is about building trust over time with the dog. Guarding is about in almost every once in a while it's social aggression, all right, and dominance. Hey, I said the big D word. People don't like that, but sometimes it is.
Yeah.
It's rare because most resource guarding is defensive aggression. It's about fear of loss.
Yeah.
Right? And in force-free training, we're removing that fear and building trust and pairing that again. A lot of this stuff is similar, whether we're talking about a dog that's reactive towards other dogs,
Yeah.
a dog that's aggressive towards people, or a dog that has fears or has resource guarding. It's about slowly and gradually getting closer and closer, pairing something more valuable than what the dog's guarding, and making sure that you're reading the dog, that the dog's not viewing anything aversive,
Yeah.
especially me approaching, and not taking that item away from the dog. Eventually, I'm just pairing positive reinforcement with me and I'm getting closer and closer. Then I might start by, once I get close, moving my hand just a tiny bit towards that object. Successive approximation
Yeah.
with rewards of slowly, gradually moving to that object and actually then picking up the object, whatever it is.
Right.
And I might just start by, if this is the object, touch, treat, touch, treat, touch, treat, touch, lift up an inch, treat, touch, lift up 2 inches, treat, and so on and so forth until I can actually get it away.
Right.
But again, it's about working more with the dog's underlying emotional state to change that outward behavior. It's
Yeah.
not about punishing the dog, which again will over time just exacerbate that behavior and make it worse.
So, okay, that makes sense. But what about let's what about like separation anxiety, for example? Because here's my thing. I personally feel that letting the dog just cry it out, that is aversive. That is negative. And you're telling me I can't correct the dog. You're telling me that I can't like when I'm outside of the room have a nice e-collar on my dog, they start crying and bop, hit that and
Yeah.
now I feel like in my head or I'm kind of I should word this more appropriately. I feel like a lot of balanced trainers would argue that that is aversive.
What's aversive? The person
Allowing the
leading?
dog to cry it out, allowing the dog to sit there and cry it
Yeah,
out. So
yeah.
aren't I doing the dog a favor by correcting that behavior?
Well, here's the thing. Because panic doesn't extinguish, punishment can't extinguish, especially when it comes to emotions. Okay. There's no way you can correct and punish a dog and extinguish the dog's panic.
Right.
You could stop the crying, the whining, the spinning, the barking, whatever, maybe some destructive behavior temporarily,
Right.
but you've done nothing about the dog's panic. All right. The only way that panic gets dealt with is for it to be desensitized. So step one, especially with separation anxiety, especially with severe separation anxiety. And I should have said this about the aggression. Rule out medical issues.
Right.
Number one. All right. Step two would be teaching extremely short, successful absences. I might not even get out the door.
Right.
I might, take a step towards the door, mark and reward. 2 steps towards the door, mark and reward. 3 steps, 5 steps, 10 steps, mark and reward. Then 2 steps. Why the 2 steps when I was at 10? Because if I have this linear path of keep on increasing duration,
Right.
the dog can view the pattern and then the dog can start to panic. Oh, this is going to get longer. So I'm going back and forth. As I'm increasing duration, I'm also presenting the dog with shorter absences and mixing that up a little bit so the dog can't view a pattern.
Yeah.
But I'm doing that very gradually, very slowly, breaking that down into very tiny little steps. All right. Now, when we've got a dog with separation anxiety,
Right.
we can't let the dog, just like anything else we talked about, continue to rehearse that behavior, number one, no, especially because it could hurt itself if it's real severe. Number two, it's not just about rehearsing that behavior, it's about continuing to condition that underlying emotional state. So in the beginning, and this is inconvenient, I get it, the dog can't be alone.
Right.
What does that mean? Well, maybe you've got to have somebody come over, watch a dog. Maybe you've got to take the dog to doggy daycare. Some people have the luxury of maybe temporarily working remotely from home.
Right.
And I get that that's a lot for some people. All right. And that punishment seems like it's the way to go.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I work with a lot of separation anxiety cases. All I pretty much do is aggression, reactivity, anxiety, including like separation anxiety and obsessive compulsive behaviors. These things do not get resolved with punishment.
Right.
And again, people need to focus more on, hey, what's the underlying emotional state that's driving the behavior versus the behavior? Because the behavior is a symptom of the problem, and the problem is the dog's underlying emotional state.
Right.
All right. It's kind of like a weed. You can keep cutting off the tops, the part you can see. But if you don't get at the root of that weed, it's going to keep popping up. And if you don't get at the root of these behavior challenges, which in many cases is the underlying emotional state, and make that change, it's just going to keep coming back. It's going to come back. It's going to come back. Now, with separation anxiety, I talked about, very short, successful absences where the dog is not showing distress. Step 3 is slowly, like I said, building duration at the dog's pace.
Right.
And you've got to be able to read canine body language with all these behavior issues to know, is the dog very mildly starting to have stress, where these canine body language stress signals are things that most trainers, definitely most pet parents don't even know exist.
Right.
But it would be nice if we could ask the dog, hey, at this duration of absence, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10?
Right.
Right? We can't. So we have to rely upon canine body language to kind of give us that feedback of where the dog's at emotionally. Now, it'd be nice if we could put a heart rate monitor on the dog and things like that. But we can, as part of the body language, look at breathing patterns, respiration, number of breaths, things of that nature. So some of that, we can do as well. But we can't, in that moment, we're not taking cortisol unless we're doing research, cortisol samples and things of that nature. Step 4 would be, in all this training, when it comes to separation anxiety, you got to make sure that all your departures and your returns are the most boring thing in the world.
Yeah.
A lot of people make a big mistake and they contribute to
Yes. I say this all the time. I agree with what you're about to say. Let's hear
making a huge deal when they leave and making a huge deal when they come back. If I come back, I'm like, oh, I missed you so much.
Yes.
And the dog just gets all emotionally
because they're so
dysregulated.
extremely excited for that moment to occur. And so as a result, what are we creating in that dog? Anticipation. Anticipation leads to anxiety. Plain and simple. Anxiety doesn't necessarily have to be oh, I'm so scared right now. It can also be, oh, when's it going to happen? Oh, when's it going to happen? Oh, when's it going to happen? And that alone, guess what? It is cortisol. So many people, in addition with like punishment, they think that punishment inherently means that I am just sitting here yanking and cranking on the dog. That's not the case. Punishment, like we discussed at the very beginning, is any unpleasant stimulus that is utilized as a consequence in order to lower the likelihood of a behavior reoccurring, right? And so the same thing can be said about things like anxiety and cortisol. It doesn't have to be as a result of, I am so scared that the big scary mailman is coming back. No, it can be, I have no clue when mom is coming home again, but I know that when she comes home, it is going to be like the most amazing thing that has ever happened in my entire life, and I need it to happen right now. I need it to happen right now. And they want this to occur. So I completely agree. 100%.
Increased cortisol, or I should say this, aversives or punishment or negative reinforcement do not have the corner of the market when it comes to cortisol. What do I mean by that? Cortisol can increase with increased arousal, can increase with increased excitement.
Yeah.
Cortisol can increase if the dog anticipates and is excited about getting a food reward.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, I started this conversation out that good force-free training starts with questions. Okay.
Yeah.
And looking for things that happen that are stressful, that obviously we try not to intentionally do it, but sometimes unintentionally. And we're always looking and reading the dog to make sure. And the thing is, with separation anxiety versus punishment, we're not teaching the dog to tolerate being alone and to just shut down that behavior. We're teaching them that being alone is safe.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. And when they feel safe, well, there's no need for that behavior. That behavior is a result of panic.
It's no longer functional.
Separation anxiety really should be called separation panic.
Yeah.
It's more than anxiety. It's a panic attack. And that's why And there are going to be some people that don't like this. And I'm not saying every dog with separation anxiety needs medication, but listen, we've done lots of tracking.
Yeah.
A lot of dogs that have true separation anxiety, real separation anxiety.
Yeah.
A lot of those dogs are going to need medication in conjunction with behavior modification, and eventually those
Absolutely.
dogs can be weaned off that medication.
Yeah. Yeah. And and this is just my uneducated guess here, but I feel like a large part of that is because inherently separation anxiety, in order to fix it, requires you to put the dog in a situation that is going to increase levels of panic, fear, cortisol. I have to
Not if you're doing it right, though, with
Yes,
force-free.
yes, right. What I mean is, it is much easier for me to correct. I don't like that word. It is much easier for me to help a dog with an issue such as reactivity towards other dogs because I'm right there with them. I'm presenting, I'm giving them that positive reinforcement the whole entire time. Whereas inherently with separation anxiety, I have to walk out of the room.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for a short, itty bitty, minuscule half of a second, I have to walk out of the room. And I think that inherently is going to make it more difficult.
You're talking
because I
about for
can't-
reinforcement, positive
Yes,
reinforcement?
right. Yes,
Not
precisely.
necessarily, because you can have longer term reinforcers. A
Yeah.
frozen peanut butter Kong.
Ah, yes, yes.
Again, the treat and train, the remote feeder. I can walk out the door and hit my remote, and it can,
Right.
it can spit treats to the dog.
Yeah,
so
that is true.
Again, force-free training is a very thoughtful
Yeah,
process. And again, it's about looking at these challenges and saying, how can I do this?
right.
How can I make that happen? What ways do I need to rearrange my plan
Right.
to make this work?
Yeah.
All right. Listen, anybody can punish a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes timing, or it works better when you got good timing, right? But anybody can punish a dog. Anybody can suppress a behavior. I mean, my God, when I was a balanced trainer, I had 3-year-olds working with dogs with
yes.
shock collar remotes in their hand. And a 3-year-old could make it work. Okay.
Yeah.
You're laughing and shaking your head, but this is true. You've been
It
there,
is
done
so
that.
true.
It
It
is
is so true.
Listen, but you know what a 3-year-old can't do is what we're talking. Well, they could
Right.
if you really worked hard with them. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's where we get into another issue, about, well, can the average pet parent do this? Absolutely they can.
Yeah.
If you are a good teacher.
Yeah.
None of this is rockets. I mean, it's science, but it's not like it's so damn complicated.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nuances that a lot of people don't know,
Yeah.
but if a pet parent's not having success, it doesn't mean that force-free training doesn't work. It means that I need to look at the training plan and make adjustments for that individual.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think that I've gotten a good look into how force-free training really can affect our behavior training. And I think that a good idea, like you said at the beginning, that we may have to do 2 parts here. I think that getting a really good deep dive into, because a big question that I personally have, and that I'm certain that a lot of balanced trainers have, and maybe we can really dive into this in another episode, because what I'm hearing here is how force-free training is super beneficial for behavioral problems. Why can't I use them with just regular obedience then? Why can't I use punishment and corrections? Like, what if I'm not worried about the behavioral state of the dog? If I'm just trying to train my dog, we're just talking about loose leash walk, sit down, stay, heel, things like this.
Yeah.
A dog that is not in peril, a dog that is not experiencing stress, a dog that is not experiencing fear.
Yeah.
Why
would you want to add stress to that dog when it was not experiencing stress and using aversives?
Yeah.
Number one. All right. When these behaviors can be taught successfully using force-free methods,
Yeah.
why would you intentionally use anything that would cause even low level of fear, pain, and intimidation? Because that's the only way those tools work.
Right.
All right. And again, the dog's not, this is what's hard for a lot of people to get.
Yeah.
The dog's not so much learning how to sit as it is learning how to turn off the pain.
Right.
And I'm not talking about a dog yelping in pain. Granted, there are some trainers that are that heavy handed.
Yeah.
Okay? And again, I can't say this enough, even mild, controllable, predictable aversives light
Yeah.
up the threat circuitry within the nervous system.
Right.
There is a price to pay.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily see that fallout right away. It can take time. And again, I want to say this, not every dog is going to completely fall apart.
Right.
Genetics, temperament, drive,
Yeah.
these dogs, these incredibly bred and engineered Belgian Malinois that are
Yeah.
in the law enforcement, military, and protection sport.
Oh, I know
competition.
these firsthand.
They can handle and tolerate
Yeah.
a crap ton of pressure, all right, without falling apart.
Well,
where
I
other
mean,
dogs don't. But let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Those dogs are still under a lot of stress.
Yeah, no, absolutely they are. And I mean, these dogs are just bred different. Like you said, I mean, the reality is
Most people don't own a dog that's like
no.
a combat soldier.
no, the reality is this is a dog that at 10 weeks of age being put onto a bite glove, right? Is biting onto a bite glove, and I'm sitting here and I'm slapping the dog in the face to teach this dog at such a young age that when something hits you, when something hurts, when something like this occurs to you, you need to continue biting. You need to bite and hold.
And
This
it's
is a
all
dog-
about avoidance.
Yeah,
it's all about
exactly.
escape, avoidance, training.
Precisely. And the thing is, they're bred for this. These are dogs. It doesn't necessarily make it okay or not okay. We're not going to get into the semantics when it comes to a military dog or a law enforcement dog. But the reality is,
I'm going to make the argument today
Yeah.
that with drones
Yeah.
and with robotics, even in its early stages
Yeah.
currently, I think there's an argument to be made that we don't necessarily need those dogs.
Right. I can hear that.
We can. I think there's a bigger benefit to scent detection for explosives
Right.
and drugs and narcotics.
Right.
But when it comes to doing patrol work,
Yeah.
helping to apprehend suspects or however
Yeah.
you term it, I don't know that we need them anymore.
Right.
We have other
Right.
options.
Yeah.
Now, does the law enforcement particular agency or the military unit have those resources? That's
Right.
a question, right?
Right.
But let's face it. What does it cost? What does it cost to get, train, and maintain that dog?
Oh my gosh. I mean, one
Through its
individual
lifetime.
dog.
Through its
one
lifetime.
one individual dog, minimum, we're looking at $100,000 minimum. And we're talking bare minimum. This is a dog that we got cheap, that we probably bred ourselves. This is not a dog that we got from a breeder in Germany, in Belgium, wherever we're getting the dog from. This is a dog that we bred ourselves. We are now paying all this money for its health care. We're paying all this money for its training. We're paying money for its housing. We're paying money to train the person that's going to work with this dog. We have a lot of expenses. And some of these dogs, we spend $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 on just the dog alone. Just the dog alone.
For that cost, for that dog,
Yeah.
you could have 33 drones.
Exactly. And I hear your argument. I absolutely hear your argument.
I mean,
And-
listen, if I got 33 drones swarming me, I'm a bad guy. And any one of those 33 could fire off something, a dart, a shot, a rubber bullet. I don't care what the hell it is. I'm stopping unless I'm on PCP. And let me tell you something. You're taking that dude down with force one way or another.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
you're going to use that drone.
that is true.
All right. Okay. It's either punishment or threat of punishment for that dude.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Now,
I
of course, we're
agree.
going to have balance trainers saying, see, in the real world, all right, it's not all unicorns and roses. Okay. There's some
Yeah.
thorns in the
Yeah.
real world. The real world has all kinds of aversives.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
therefore, in nature, there are aversives. So, therefore, it should logically make sense that it's okay to use aversives on dogs. And then they'll bring up the argument, well, watch a mother dog use aversives to correct the puppy. Here's
Right.
the thing. Here's the thing about that. When you look at operant conditioning in the quadrants,
Right.
those are descriptive.
Mm-hmm.
They're not prescriptive.
Yeah.
All they do is identify how learning can happen. Nowhere in the quadrants, and Skinner never said, oh, yeah, you've got to use all four, and that positive punishment, negative punishment, you should use more than or less than this quadrant or that quadrant. Matter of fact, Skinner, as early as definitely 42, I would even argue maybe as early as 1938, argued against the use of aversives, argued against the use of punishment, argued against the use of negative reinforcement, and argued for the use of positive reinforcement. That was a big deal for Skinner. And the more time went by, the more he was anti-aversive and pro positive reinforcement. Now, when it comes to the dog, the mom dog correcting the puppies, yeah, she does. Guess what? They don't get to have a lot of cognitive processing, and they don't have the ability intellectually to be able to design a force-free training plan. All right. So just because they do that, all right, doesn't mean that we should or I'm going to.
Right.
And again, we need to talk about necessity.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's what a lot necessity, welfare, cost to the dog. What other alternatives could I have used that would have worked?
Yeah.
When it comes to necessity,
Yeah.
the biggest argument is if you've got a dog with predatory chasing behavior that is so hardwired, so biologically driven,
Right.
that you need an aversive to stop that. And the dog could die, could run into traffic and things like that. Well, first of all, I'm going to start with management. Okay.
Right.
I'm going to have, barriers, gates, fencing, walls. When I do take the dog out, I'm going to have the dog on a leash.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to know my surroundings to the best of my ability. Again, keep the dog from rehearsing that behavior and experiencing that prey going by or whatever it wants to chase after. And it's the same thing. Gradually, systematically, I'm teaching the dog to check in with me, engagement, gradually, systematically, slowly, I'm getting closer and closer and closer to this fast moving prey item. I might start off with the prey being at a big distance and going very slow. Okay. Now, granted, I can't control the prey, but I can control things like prey. There's all kinds of equipment out there that I can have, even a lure course, those things that they use for lure course.
Yeah.
I can use that at a distance with a remote, and I can change the speed of that. And you can desensitize the dog to that. You can teach alternative behaviors. You can create more powerful reinforcers for the dog. Now, that's probably one of the more difficult behaviors, but there's no necessity. There's no necessity that you've got to punish the dog. And again, here's the problem. You cannot extinguish behavior with punishment. So when the handler's not paying attention, when that dog that was punished gets too close, when the tool's not on the dog, that behavior is going to resurface because all it was suppressed. That's all it was.
Yeah.
It was suppressed. And so in the long run, we know that it's not that reliable. Hell, there are plenty of, dogs that were killing sheep
Mm-hmm.
that were punished with e-collars that are still killing sheep.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and again, I had a 2-hour podcast yesterday with somebody that's working with gorillas, working with giraffe, working with really aggressive, hell, working with a parrot that has 300 or 400, 300 to 400 pounds per square inch bite. It could break a broomstick who's
Yeah.
aggressive. Okay. And trust me, that freaking bird is faster than you are.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Now, if she can work with all these species, I mean, a ton of different species that are much more complex, you're not putting a leash on them, you're not putting a collar on them, you can't use punishment, and they're getting it done. Amazing things getting it done. Teaching new behaviors, modifying behaviors that have a strong emotional driving
Right.
factor. The problem with most balanced trainers, like I said, they've got this very narrow view of what positive reinforcement force-free training is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot to it. But once you learn it, once you have those skills, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And the bond and the trust and the relationship that you end up with that dog, completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Completely different. And people say, well, my dog's happy. We got a great bond. Yeah, imagine what it would have been if you didn't do that.
And I think that a lot of people just don't understand that specific regard when it comes to fear-free aversives, is the impact that it can have on overall relationship with your animal, it's it's crazy because I was telling you this the other day. My personal dog that, again, mind you, when I was actively doing her training, I was a balanced trainer. I put the e-collar on her every single day. I gave her lots of love, lots of treats. I never, quote unquote, abused my dog, never once. My wife, however, she, in addition to never having, quote unquote, abused my dog, has never even used aversives with her. Now, I can't say never. But for the most part, she has never used aversives on my dog. Now, mind you, this is a dog that was trained for cortisol detection, utilizing my saliva, utilizing my actual cortisol from my own mouth, my saliva without cortisol in it. This is a dog that I did all of the training. She spent all the time with me. We have spent hundreds of hours on airplanes, traveling together, going places. This is a dog that when you give her a command, her first response is to look at me to get permission to do the command, right? This dog.
We call it a cue, by the way.
Yeah. Yes, Q. I apologize. Yes.
I mean, there are some things that are a little bit challenging. Okay,
Yes,
for me.
yes.
I mean,
and it
there's a
shows that I'm
certain
still
level of-
transitioning.
there's a certain level of political correctness in the force-free
Yes.
world. So no longer saying commands, but cues.
Right,
okay?
cues,
No,
right.
and in some cases, not even saying dog or animal, calling it the learner.
The learner. Okay. I
Instead
gotta.
of
Like I'm in my
instead of
son's classroom.
Yeah, instead of obedience commands, foundational behaviors.
Foundational
Because
behaviors. Okay.
obedience is that control factor, right?
That makes sense. No, that makes sense.
Yeah,
See, and
so-
these are all things that I need to learn.
Well, if you want to be politically correct,
Yeah.
I mean, and look, it's hard when you've, like, for myself, I've spent decades
Yeah.
looking at things one way,
Yeah.
saying certain terminology.
Yeah.
Okay. For example, this might upset somebody, but it's not that big of a deal. It's more a taxonomy issue than a functional issue.
Right.
There's no such thing as rewards in training.
What do you mean?
There's reinforcers.
Mm.
There can be all kinds of rewards. Doesn't mean you're reinforcing a damn thing.
That's fair.
Not all rewards are reinforcers.
Right.
All
But are all
reinforcers,
reinforcers are rewards?
they're rewarding.
There we go.
But, and it depends how you define rewarding and stuff like that.
Right.
But, the technical term is reinforcer. But with a pet parent,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to necessarily use the term reinforcer a lot. I might use
Right.
more, treat, reward, pay the dog
Yeah.
type of thing.
No, I get that. And so to kind of finish up what I was saying, this dog, that I have developed an amazing relationship with. She adores me, or she did, until she met my wife and saw what her life was like from somebody that was fear-free, purely positive. And I kid you not, Will, last night is a perfect example. I crawled into bed last night and my dog gets up and snuggled closer to my wife. As I crawled into bed, I will grab my dog and I will snuggle with her and I will love on her just like I used to. Her and I used to sleep like this on airport floors, okay?
Yeah.
Just cuddled up, snuggled up, and she is like, nope, and she slowly slithers her way out of my arms
Yeah.
and goes and lays with my wife.
Yeah.
Does it all the time. And what I'm getting at here is it is a perfect example of the difference in the relationship and how quickly that relationship was formed with my wife.
Yeah.
This is a dog I've had for 5 years. It's taken my wife 1.5 years, 2 years, not even, It's crazy. The difference that it has on just the relationship with your animal.
Yeah. And, a lot of these things you can't even get or grasp unless you have crossed over and you have the ability to compare and contrast both of those camps,
Right.
balance versus force free, and in the real world. You've got real world experience in both. It's,
Right.
I'm always having to debate balance trainers that have never been successful force free trainers that know just that much.
Right.
Most of them don't have any formal education.
Yeah.
A lot of them barely passed their high school biology course, but yet they're confident reading, complex peer-reviewed scientific studies and thinking that they understand, cortisol levels and they understand research methods and variables and control groups and things. And they don't. They read the abstract or they Google the abstract. They look at the conclusions at the bottom, and then they cherry pick one little piece to justify the use of aversives. That's not the way science works. The way science works is you take the totality of the science, not just one study, not just one aspect of a study, but you take the totality of multiple studies, multiple types of studies, and from different disciplines.
Yeah.
Okay, veterinary behavior studies, applied animal behavior studies, experimental studies with control groups, survey and analysis studies, studies from neurobiology and neuroscience, studies from behavioral science, studies from psychology, studies from ethology, studies from animal welfare. You take it in its entirety, the whole aggregate, and you look at, okay, what is the global scientific consensus?
Yeah.
Is everybody going to agree on everything? No. Nope. There's going to be a little bit of dispute on things.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And that's okay. But we have to take a look at the general population of dogs. And this is a mistake that a lot of balance trainers make. A lot of balance trainers, if they've been doing it a while, they end up with a high drive dog, don't they?
Absolutely.
Why? They can handle the hell out of pressure.
Yes,
and these people want to
exactly.
use pressure.
Exactly.
And they want these robots. They want this perfect sit, this perfect heel.
Yeah.
And and yeah, you can pressure a dog into doing all that stuff. First of all, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
And number two, they take that very limited experience and generalize it across the entire dog population. Right. And the ones that are most vocal, that argue the most, are the ones that compete in protection sports.
Yeah.
They're egomaniacs, they're control freaks, that they care more about ribbons and trophies than dog welfare.
Yeah.
They're competitive at all costs. Their identity is completely tied with that. I did a video, a reel about the use of aversives in competitive sport dog training, being the steroids of the dog sports. All right. It gives you an advantage.
Absolutely.
With those dogs. But to say that that is appropriate across the board with dogs, or to say more so, to say that it doesn't have a negative impact on dogs across the general population is insanity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Insanity.
even if we were to say, oh, but my dog was specifically bred for this. My dog is very high drive. My dog loves to work. My dog can handle the pressure. My dog can handle this. My dog this. My dog that. Let's look at the autopsies of these police dogs, these military dogs at the end of their lives, that they lived wonderful lives. They were very happy dogs. But let's look at the physical ramifications of the neck muscles of these dogs that have been on a choke their whole life, of these dogs that have been on prong collars their whole lives. I got
How's
to
their
physically,
eyesight? What's their optical nerve
right,
like?
exactly. And I personally got to witness. I had the pleasure of being in Lackland Air Force Base, where all of the dog autopsies happen for the DoD. And I got to watch an autopsy occur, and they showed us the scar tissue around the dog's neck. I mean, it was 360 degrees all the way around the neck, and it was deep, Will. The scar tissue went so deep into that dog's neck.
And now, aside from the autopsy, if you were just looking at the dog with your eyeballs, you have no clue.
No clue. None.
Now,
this is a dog that looks like genuinely as if he enjoyed it.
Right. And the same thing with the nervous system, right?
Yeah.
You can't peer inside the nervous system without a fMRI machine.
Right.
Okay. And if we're just depending on our eyeballs to look at what we're seeing, we're screwed, because how many people that have pretty serious anxiety, PTSD, and stuff like that look fine on the outside?
Oh my gosh, almost all of them.
Seemingly just functional as hell.
So many of them.
When on the inside, they're a mess.
Yeah. There's a reason why it's called the silent killer,
Yeah.
There's a reason.
And that constant cortisol.
Yeah. It's not good.
Again, it affects every cell in
everything.
the body.
Everything. It breaks down your body completely, from your brain to the muscles in your toes. It just breaks it down. It interrupts different processes in your body, no matter what we're talking about. Cortisol disintegrates everything it touches.
And again, some dogs are going to get through it and they're going to look just fine. And you might not see the negative consequences of that training method and tools until much, much, much later.
Right.
Okay.
Precisely.
I get a lot of balance trainers that say, I've felt the e-collar, it doesn't hurt.
Right.
Well, you've not had somebody try to instruct you with an e-collar.
Yeah.
There's a very difference, okay?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. Can the dog, and especially with balance trainers that really don't help the dog much in the beginning, can the dog understand what we're saying?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So if I'm going to instruct a person with an e-collar and put that on their neck, not on their wrist or their arm, put it on their neck and start asking them to do things in
a different language.
Klingon, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
They don't understand, right?
I take a native-born American and I start speaking Tagalog.
Yeah,
You know?
and the other thing is, okay, look, I want things to happen a little bit faster, so I'm going to put a little pressure on you, okay?
Yeah.
Well, let me do a 20-minute training session with a human being not speaking English and for every command using the collar at
Yeah.
low level, just uncomfortable enough to motivate them to do something and them not know exactly what to do, right? And I guarantee you, after 20 minutes, that person is going to be so stressed out. They have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah.
Especially, I watch these people, go, this does not hurt my dog. And they got two collars synced up, one on each side, synced up to one remote, blasting the dog at 127 at the highest level of a dog trick collar. And, this guy's a big, tough guy, the handler.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, big, tough guy, let's put that damn collar on you, blast you on both sides with two collars at 127. Oh, I know you can handle it once,
Yeah.
maybe twice. Okay. Let me keep hammering on you for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Tell me where the hell you are after that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Tell you what, I'll even
and
bring it down to half of that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll bring it down to 63, 65.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had an e-collar on my neck at max level. And let me tell you something, Will.
Not pleasant.
No.
Now, granted, most trainers don't.
In fact, I'm gonna throw it out there. It was you that put it on my neck at max level. And let me tell you, I only let you do it once.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done it. I mean, I know what it feels like. I've done it. I've done a lot with
It's crazy. I remember when that happened to me, I thought to myself, how the hell can any dog manage this?
Yeah.
It was insane. Will, it took over my body.
Yeah.
I remember I felt like I had just received the strongest muscle contraction that took up the entire right side of my body.
Yeah.
And there was nothing I could do about it.
Yeah.
And
Now,
the
granted-
impact, it was such a lasting impact after it was gone as well. It didn't just that was something that I used to say all the time. Oh, once I'm done pushing the button, it goes away. The hell it does. No, it did not. That
Depends
lasted
on the level of stimulation.
Minutes later,
The anxiety is still there. And again,
Oh,
I'm not
yeah.
necessarily talking about a dog that completely falls apart. Most trainers that use aversives don't do it in such a way that the dog just shits itself.
Yeah.
And is trembling and
Right.
tail is completely tucked and hiding in a corner. However,
Yeah.
I have seen people take dogs that were that way, put an
Right.
e-collar on them, all right, push them through that shit, and somehow say, see, magic. Imagine
Right.
trying to get the dog to do this with positive reinforcement. It would never happen. How long did this take with
Hang
the
on
e-collar?
1 second. Will, I'm getting somebody is knocking at my door. What's up? Yeah, I am, buddy. Yeah. Anyways, sorry about that. He has been knocking for like a whole minute and a half.
Okay.
I thought he would
still
I thought
have
he
an
would get the
e-collar?
point. Yeah, right? Oh man, oh man. But anyways, I think that I've gotten a really good idea and understanding here of, some of the big differences. And I think that it would be very beneficial for us to do another podcast where I can really jump into the obedience or the foundational behavior side of things.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's extremely important to really understand not just why this is happening, but I think that a lot of people are like, okay, Mr. Smart Guy, how are you doing it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how are we accomplishing these things? And so I
And
definitely
you
look
get a
forward
lot
to
of
talking some more.
I get a
about
lot
it.
of balance training say, where are your videos?
Yeah.
Where are the
Yeah.
videos you training the dog? I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, first of all, you don't understand anything about a behaviorist.
Yeah.
Okay. My records are like medical records; they're confidential. Okay. That's not something that you share. It'd be like asking you, can I see the video of your colonoscopy? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, very different. And number two, I don't use my clients' problems and their dogs' problems for social media benefit, clickbait,
Right.
followers. Okay. I have no interest in that whatsoever.
Right.
And good force retraining. And again, I work with mainly aggression, reactivity, fears, phobias. There is not a lot that's interesting and exciting when you're doing that work. It's
Yeah.
a very methodical, slower process.
Yeah.
The dog's not freaking out. The dog is calm the entire time.
Yeah.
And what people are really wanting when they say, "Where's your videos?" They want me to purposefully provoke a dog, get
Yeah.
the dog triggered, show a dog completely out of control, and then show the dog completely non-responsive to that trigger and not even caring about it. Well,
Yeah. And
now
the
let me ask you
reality
something.
is, even when we were doing balanced, even when you and I were balanced, we would never put a dog in that situation. Just period. Plain and simple.
No, I mean, I even without being force free back then,
Yeah.
I knew enough that, I tell people sometimes because they think that I've got to work with them face to face, and I do it.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the help I do, the coaching, the consulting I do is virtual.
Yeah.
I got people all across the country that are
Mm-hmm.
having fantastic results, and I never put my hand on the dog.
Right.
All right. And balanced trainers wouldn't get that. Because again, force free training is mainly up here.
Right.
All right. It's about knowing it's about what to look for, how to design things. All right. It's very cerebral, but
Yeah.
the results are unmatched.
Right.
And nobody's saying that aversives can't suppress and shut down a behavior very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. But there's a price to pay. And you got to keep, like I said, you got to keep on correcting the dog.
Yeah.
In most cases, are there going to be some dogs? Of course there are.
Right.
Of course there are. Just like there are some dogs that will be scared to death when I click a clicker. And,
Yeah.
I had people say that, well, halties are aversive, harnesses are aversive, and stuff like that. And I said, well, first of all, most force-free trainers don't even use them.
Yeah.
They're marketed for positive reinforcement, but a lot of truly positive reinforcement force-free trainers don't use them because they are designed to work with negative reinforcement.
Right.
Okay. Head halters, halties, they are. I personally have never used one.
Yeah.
Right. I've watched somebody use it. I'm like, yeah, that's not something any dog.
Yeah. See, because the other thing is, I don't like, even as even with balanced training, one thing that I did not like was a punisher that I was not in complete control over. And that's another reason why head halters and things like that are just a no-go for me. I don't like something that the harder the dog pulls, the more intense the aversive is going to be. Because quite frankly, I don't trust the dog to even be able to appropriate. If I'm going to sit here and argue that most people can't, I definitely cannot argue that a dog can appropriately apply pressure. And so I don't like those tools anyways.
When I ask trainers of any behavior that you feel that needs to be taught into the dog, any behavior that you want to modify out of the dog,
Yeah.
which behaviors is it impossible to achieve that with force-free positive reinforcement where you absolutely need an aversive? And I've only heard two things.
Yeah.
The thing I hear again is the predatory chasing. That's
Yeah.
what I hear. I hear that all the time. And one time I heard somebody say noise phobias. And it's total BS with the noise phobias.
That makes absolutely
I've
no
had
sense.
Unbelievably phobic
Yeah.
dogs with noises.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I've got a great example, a client in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a challenge. He lived right by the Army base. We couldn't ask them to stop artillery practice.
Yes.
Okay. So there was a lot that was very challenging to try to control the dog, avoid that trigger when you can't
Right.
tell the army, hey, stop blowing up shit. Okay.
Yeah.
But yet we were still able to do that.
Yeah.
Combination of short-term medication,
Mm-hmm.
counter conditioning and desensitizing the dog to noise canceling headphones, white noise machines, and doing gradual systematic counter conditioning and desensitization.
Right.
The dog can hear any sounds today, doesn't care. Not on medication anymore. Doesn't have to wear noise canceling headphones. Don't need to have the white noise machine. And again, Alabama, I never once put my hand on that dog.
Right.
Coached everything with the pet parent thousands of miles away
Right.
through video conference and had unbelievable success.
Right.
Now that one, I've got an actual video testimonial. And the only reason I had it, asked her to do it, is because I'm working with her with a second dog now. She's got a problem with the second dog,
Yeah.
with being aggressive towards her husband that she just got married to. And you know how hard it is to rehome husband. So, kind of stuck with the problem.
Yeah.
And I asked her to do a video testimonial. I told the trainer, I said, listen, do you want to see the testimony? He goes, no, because it wasn't severe. Yeah, they just absolutely, there's no way in hell that they believe it can work
Yeah.
without aversives.
Right.
Okay. What's that saying? Those that say it can't be done need to get out of the way of those that are doing
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Precisely.
But yet again, those people that say it can't be done never crossed over.
Yeah, I was just about to say,
chose-
those who say it can't be done have never tried it.
They've tried it, but with their very tiny, limited
Yeah.
understanding of how things
Yeah.
work with positive reinforcement, because punishment and negative reinforcement are so basic.
Right.
They can't even comprehend that positive reinforcement has a lot more than just giving a reinforcer. Whether
Right.
that's a toy, play, food reward. See, there's the reward thing. Yeah, they just can't comprehend it. And until you make a commitment, until you make a real solid commitment to learn and be educated
Right.
and to build those skills, you don't have a clue.
Right.
I mean, I spent the vast majority, this, I spent the vast majority of my time as a balanced trainer debating, arguing, trying to prove force-free positive reinforcement is wrong.
Yeah.
Can't be done. I said the same.
Yes, you did. Yes, you
said
did.
and did the exact same things that all these balanced trainers are arguing about. I did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I get it. But what I don't get, and what I'm trying to figure out, why do some cross over and a bunch don't? Why is it that there are some people you just absolutely, they don't have an open mind? And it's unfortunate.
I personally,
Because laziness.
I personally think that it's a little bit of fear-free derangement syndrome, if you ask me personally.
Yeah. There you go. I like that. I'm going to start using that. You suffer from fear-free derangement syndrome.
Yeah. FFDS, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to use that. I like that. Yeah, but it's unfortunate,
Yeah.
There's a lot of ignorance out there, lack of knowledge.
Right. Right.
People don't like that word ignorant, but it just means lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, they ignore it. They ignore
And
anything that
ignorance
doesn't
is
fit their
typically
narrative.
bliss. The beauty is typically ignorance is bliss, but in this case, it is not bliss. It is
here's the
stress-inducing.
Here's the problem. Definitely over the next 20 years,
Yeah.
things are going to change dramatically.
Right.
The dog training, and especially for complex behavior cases,
Yeah.
there's going to be licensure. You're not going to be able to just call yourself a dog trainer. And with licensure, it means that there's regulations, which means that you're going to have formal education and really know your
Right.
shit.
Right.
You're going to be the standard of practice will be positive reinforcement force free.
Yeah.
Oh, there might be in the beginning a little tiny window and door left open for the use of aversives, but it would be extremely limited,
Right.
last resort. Not that I'm saying that I agree with that, but I'm talking about political realities. There are
Yeah.
groups out there that are trying to pass legislation that involves banning all aversives. That ain't happening in 2025. I don't
Right.
care what anybody says. That's not happening in 2026. It's not happening in 2025. But within the next 20 years, yeah, you're not going to be able to use an aversive.
Yeah.
All right. You're going to have a formal education.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have continuing education. You're going to have to do the work with force-free positive reinforcement only. And there's going to be ethics and a code of conduct, disciplinary action if you step out of that and do something wrong. So that's not going to affect me. And it wouldn't matter if it did because I'm there. But for young trainers and new trainers starting out, look, you better grow, you better evolve, or you will be irrelevant.
Yeah.
And you'll be out of work.
Yep.
All right. And I'll guarantee you this, there's not a fucking AI robot out there that's going to be using an aversive with dogs.
Yeah.
And that's probably coming down the road too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We are almost there, Will. We are on the cusp.
Yeah,
we
I
are
know.
on the cusp
People think
of
it's not
something.
going to affect dog training because
It's going
such
to
a
affect
nuanced
everything.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
we have AI robots conducting open heart surgery.
Yeah.
It is going to occur.
Yeah.
We have AI robots. I don't want to say on a daily basis because I don't know the stats, but on multiple occasions now have completed unassisted surgeries.
Yeah.
I think it was I don't even know what type of surgery. It was a minor surgery, but we've had completely unassisted, zero human intervention, start to finish from
Yeah.
open to close surgeries conducted by AI.
Yeah.
And if you do not believe that your sector of work, your industry will not be touched, if you do not believe that your industry will be touched, you are kidding yourself.
Yeah.
We are getting to a point that there will not be a job, and I will say that again, there will not be a job that is not completed by some form of robot, AI powered in some way, whether it's just major assistance or 100% takeover.
Sure. Yeah. And the thing is, it's interesting because I've used different AI programs, Chat GPT, Claude,
Yeah.
Gemini.
Yeah.
And when you start asking about dog training and behavior mod,
Mm-hmm.
the information that you're getting as far as how you should do things is force free,
Look at that.
positive reinforcement. And there's science out there that is not necessarily all in alignment with force-free
Right.
positive reinforcement. The totality, the general consensus is overwhelming. Yeah, it's positive reinforcement force-free. But it's so much in the minority
Yeah.
that AI never says, oh, you need to use a correction, you need to use punishment. It would always advise not to. I suppose if you gave it a certain kind of prompt, you could force it into saying it, but it wouldn't. I don't think it's even would be that easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be curious, because AI is biased.
Mm-hmm.
I'm force-free positive reinforcement. It might be giving me more biased stuff. I would really be interested to see if someone who was punching in a lot of stuff about punishment, negative reinforcement, and they weren't at all interested or part of force-free positive reinforcement, if they put in a question into an AI model, a chatbot, what behavior that you want to train in a dog, I've said it before, what behavior you want to modify out of a dog, is it necessary to need to use an aversive? And
Right.
would that be best practices and why?
Right.
I can't imagine that AI is coming back saying, oh, yeah, use negative reinforcement, use positive punishment, use it humanely, use a
Yeah.
very low setting on the e-collar, just light leash pressure and release with the prong collar.
Right.
I'd be shocked with what I know.
Pun intended.
Yeah. Utilizing different various AI chatbots.
Right.
And things are going to change. You're already changing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fear and the threat that balanced trainers feel
Mm-hmm.
as a result of things changing is it's interesting. It's like I start talking and posting things on social media, and it's like I just flipped a light switch and the roaches
Yeah.
are all just scattering. Okay.
Yeah.
And they cherry pick and they slice and they pick these little tiny pieces of information to try to justify their use of aversives, trying to use academic language. And they don't even know, not only is their answer wrong, but the question they use to frame their answer is wrong.
Right.
That's how far off they are.
Yeah.
But again, people love anecdote,
Yeah.
but the science is very clear.
It's been very illuminating today speaking on this. I it's interesting because a lot of the things that are being said is not so different from how it was before, before you made the crossover. It's not very different. And the reality behind that is that just speaks to the fact that your entire career, what you have been, is a science and evidence-based trainer.
I
And
wouldn't
the science
necessarily
and
say that. I could have crossed over sooner.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Could have, I said on a different podcast how it happened.
yeah,
And that was trying to mentor you and younger trainers that worked for me, knowing what's coming down the road,
yeah.
saying, yeah, you better get certified. You better learn how to do
Yep,
this
yep,
because
you
there's
did
going to
say
come a
that.
time. It's not a matter of if, it's when. So, just trying to mentor you. And I even said,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen in my lifetime.
Yeah,
Right. But as I said in previous podcasts, I'll say it again and make it real short and sweet. I don't ask anybody to do something I'm not going to do.
right,
So I went through that process and then my eyes were opened.
right,
Okay. Because I was, as a result of that decision, I had to take in new information that I had not had presented to me before.
right.
All right. And like I said, I was one of the most loud advocates against positive reinforcement, force-free training.
You can
Against it.
say that again.
I used to do videos,
Yeah.
okay, criticizing the hell out of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When
Now, I
I
would challenge them to $50,000
yep,
training contest.
yep.
Okay.
I when you told me that you were making the switch, when you were crossing over,
Yeah.
my first thought was, what? I was like, he's pulling my leg, right? Like, because that's the truth. You were so very loud. Anti fear free, anti
Yeah.
purely positive. And it's so amazing to see. One thing that you've always told me, even from when we first started working together, when I first started working under you and learning from you, was that when you find the science that makes sense, when you find the studies that support something that even you may disagree with, if the results are showing you exactly what the studies are telling you, how can you argue against that? And it speaks to that. It speaks to the fact that, like I was saying, like, you are a science and evidence-based trainer. You were never, I would have never called you a balanced trainer, even though that was literally what you were. I would call you a science and evidence-based trainer, and at the time the science and evidence that you were reading supported exactly that. But then you actually, you found more. You dug deeper and you tried something new, and it worked. And you're realizing the value behind it, and so that's why this is the training, you know? That's why this is what you're moving towards. And I don't think that it, because a lot of people may try and say, oh, well, this has got to be about profits, or this has got to be about, getting
Listen,
more clients, you know?
no, listen, how successful was my dog training business when I was using aversives?
Oh my goodness gracious, Will. One of the most successful in the entire state of Arizona, if not the whole country.
Bringing in, yeah, I mean, because I use Pocket Suite. A lot of trainers know about Pocket Suite.
Yeah.
And consistently at the top of the earners in the country.
Exactly.
I mean, tens of thousands of dollars every month. And we're talking on the higher end, and in some cases close to 6 figures a month in some cases. So very successful. So trust me.
Yes.
If this didn't work,
and
if we were looking at just a business model, there's no way in hell I would have crossed over.
Absolutely. 100%. That's what I have to say to anybody that wants to question your, what's the word I'm looking for here? I cannot think of the word.
Sincerity.
Yes. And your character, or are trying to say that you're just bandwagon or whatever. No, the reality is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And let me tell you, what you were doing wasn't right. What you were doing wasn't broke.
Oh, hugely successful. Hugely successful. And because you were in charge of sales and operations, you know how much money we were bringing.
Yeah, it was nice. It was good.
Unbelievable amounts of money. So
it had nothing to do with that. It had absolutely nothing to do with that. And that's why I believe you when I hear these words coming out of your mouth, and you're over here saying, this is how I run my business now. I'm like, there has to be some validity to it. There just absolutely has to be. And I cannot wait to dive more into this. I think that myself and a lot of people would benefit from another podcast where we actually dive into the how this occurs. Because I think that we've done a really good job today of talking about why, and what the differences, the major differences are between the two.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a good podcast. We're almost at 2 hours. I think that's long enough. We need to kind of get going. I don't know if you can hear that sound or not. You hear that?
I cannot hear that sound.
Not working. Then that was my ender music. That's not working. But anyway, I appreciate everybody for hanging in here. For 114 minutes it's been so far.
Right.
But yeah, if you're a balance trainer, if you're even considering crossing over, reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you. If you're truly interested in learning, if all you want to do is pick apart science and debate and cherry pick things, I've got no interest in doing that.
Right.
But if you have any interest in potentially crossing over, reach out to me. You can email me at info@phoenixdogtraining.com. And I'd be glad to talk to you about it. But we'll do another podcast. I think this is good information. Not only talking about and giving more information about what force free is, but comparing and contrasting. How do you handle this behavior where as a balance trainer we'd be doing this? What does a force free trainer do? So now, granted, I can't get into every tiny little nuance of everything that I'm going to be doing. Yeah, I know. Because sometimes when you're cooking, you take a little taste, you're like, it needs a little more salt. Okay?
Yeah, precisely.
And so there's a little bit of that in working with animals. But no, this has been good. And we'll pick it up again next time. And dive a little bit deeper into that.
Sounds good to me, Will. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
You as well. You as well. Have a good rest of your weekend. And everybody out there watching, thanks for tuning in to Dog Training Today. Until next time, train with love, train with compassion, and train with science and evidence-based protocols.